it to keep ourselves comfortable, to keep our food fresh and our beverages cold. You might say that a refrigerator works by taking heat from the inside of the box and getting rid of it on the outside.
Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. We will see you in about 45 seconds or so. Make sure that you are subscribing to our channels, our LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Turn on notifications, and we are very excited to be here with you. It's almost time, about 30 more seconds. Make sure to grab your notebook and pen so you can jot down notes along the way, because at the end of the show, you could have an opportunity to ask our guests questions so we can dive a little deeper into these topics. And here we go. Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. I see Don Baker out there. Glad to see you, my friend. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us so much. We've got a lot of people in here today. Woohoo! Yeah, let us know where you're joining from. I mean, this is a growing community. We're so glad to see you all here. So many things to talk about. We're actually making, thanks a lot, Todd. You're one of our favorites as well, man. I'm glad you're here with us. We'll have to get you on the show here soon, and we'll dive into some stuff, right? So we're doing kind of a follow-up to last week's show where we spent some time diving into aluminum brazing. We did a lot of hands-on stuff, and it was very, very popular. We had a lot of great responses from that. And so in that, hi, how's it going, Cena? Perla's out there joining us. Woo, are you proud of your man, Perla? This guy's so amazing. We're so proud to have him here with us. And glad you're feeling better, Perla. Praise that. It is it's that time of the year we're all going, oh, it's the pollen's out and the humidity's out, and yeah, great to see you both. Great to be here, Don. Thank you so much. Hey, we've got people joining in here too, pairing in. Absolutely. Be happy for you to pair and send this back out as well. This is just a community for us to all dive into the issues that we all encounter every week. And so we want you to let us know the topics that you need help with, right? There's a lot of things changing in our industry, and it's so important that we keep on top of it. Next week, we're actually going to have Bosch here introducing their new line of A2L heat pumps and product lines. So we're going to be spending time with Bosch as well as Honeywell, diving into R454B, looking at that in new products. We're going to talk about mitigation. We're going to talk about best practices with A2Ls. And we're just going to have a very, very good time hanging out. So come on back next week. We'll spend some time with our manufacturers and really get deep into the weeds with this new equipment. All right. So Ty, this is really, besides flame rectification, I think this is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about, right?
It does have a special flair to it.
Oh, that was so time. All right, so from an educator perspective, I know myself, I grew up using some traditional flaring blocks, and I do want to take a quick, almost a poll. Let us know if you're still using traditional flaring blocks. Yeah, there we go. Ty's still got one. I actually don't even have one here in my studio anymore. You like that? That was pretty good, wasn't it, Don? Ty throws them out like crazy. There's times where I'll be like laying in bed, getting ready to go to bed, and it'll click. And I'm like, oh my, he got me. Him and Eugene both. They're amazing at this. Right? So a lot of us grew up learning on a traditional flaring block. And I encourage us using a traditional flaring block when we're teaching our students, when we're teaching our technicians, how to actually prepare that end, how to actually get the block set up and what we're doing, right? Yeah, it's so important that we talk about. Thanks for joining us, Everything HVACR. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at ways to improve that, okay? I personally don't have one anymore. Ty ended up having one hanging around. I got rid of mine in a yard sale like a couple moves back because I found better ways of doing this. And it's okay if you're still using this, and it's definitely good if we're still teaching it in the classrooms, but we have to make sure that we're moving beyond that, right? And that we start getting serious about professional flaring and the torquing that comes along with that. Because we have an epidemic in our industry that starts giving the equipment itself a bad reputation, right? And that's leaks on ductless systems. We've all heard them. We've all had those calls. When I was running calls for wholesaler and for OEM equipment manufacturers, I couldn't tell you how many times that I had those calls where, all right, I got a bad performing system. I need someone on site to figure this out. I need a new piece of equipment. And it got to the point where I would actually tell them, okay, right up front, if I get there and it is an equipment issue, no big deal. If I get there and it is an installation issue because of improper flares and torquing, you're going to pay for the time, and all of your installers are going to be going to a class that I'm going to put on for you, and it's going to be on your bill. And so that ended up being part of my service requirement. It's pretty rough. It happens, though, Ty. I mean, how many times have you heard and encountered these kind of leaking scenarios?
Exactly 2. It means too many.
That's right. So we're going to spend a little time talking about flaring and torquing today and how to utilize that in the classroom properly. If we're talking about copper, right? Let's start this whole conversation off with this view because it'll help you understand the flare as we move along. If we look at the copper that we utilize in refrigeration and air conditioning, it's a pretty thick wall. It's a very soft copper, right? Yeah, you're right, Josh. When we start getting into things like 290, it's critical to do proper installations, right? Well, we're going to talk about why we're getting these better flares using the proper tools. If we think about copper, let's think about it just as a metal for a minute. Let's become metallurgists for a second. And we look at copper. Copper is a very soft material, right? And it starts out fairly thick. Now, for anyone that knows much about metallurgy, we know that we can anneal a material under compression. We can change its properties under compression. And that's what we're actually going to do when we use a flare and a flare nut to push that flare on. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our copper as a seal between dissimilar metals. Typically, we're going to have a steel or a brass flare, the male threaded piece. And then we're going to have a steel or a brass, maybe a bronze nut that is going to be mated to that surface. And in between that, we need to create a seal for that. Everything HVACR, this is exactly what we're here to talk about, my friend, because this is right? The preparation is critical on making a leak-free connection. And you can absolutely make leak-free connections that you can do properly, walk away from, and never have to return to. And that's what we're here to talk about. So let's take a look at the tools that we utilize, right? So if we go back, we'll use some comparison here. Let's see. Let me see if I can grab those as comparison, Ty. All right. So let's look at a variety of tools. We're not changing exactly the principle between our traditional flaring block and our modern concentric cone flaring blocks. We're just going to be yoking a piece of tubing, typically copper, inside of our block, and now we're going to create a flare with it. But creating that flare is actually critical because it is the seal, right? It is
On the automotive side, we use gaskets in between pieces of metal, and we have very specific torque specifications so we don't over squeeze or break those gaskets. Well, in the older days, we used copper as a gasket. If you've ever worked in some really older cars, you'll see that they had copper gaskets because the copper squeezed. It's a soft metal. It squeezed and made the seal between those two. So you can think of it as a seal, you can think of it as a gasket, but it's that same thing. And if you torque it too much or over tighten it, you will crack it. And we know, we've learned through school that we say no to crack. We do not want to crack that copper.
Ty, always right there for it.
Here's my favorite thing about these old school, these right here. Now, we know if you're teaching class, this is what we use, because the students will use pliers and leverage, and no matter how close you watch them,
Piece
they
of
will be
pipe.
using it the improper way. They'll hook them up to a vise and over tighten them, and they strip them out, and we go through these like crazy. But they're cheap. It's a great way to start that learning process. But here's how I feel about this particular one in the field. It's gotta go. Like, I hate them so much. Now, there's lots of different styles. So some of the other styles like this, it still has a flaring block with it. But the difference is it has a torque specification on the top, and it has a conal offset. So as you start to tighten this down, instead of it just equally pressing on all sides and cracking that copper, it's pushing it around one or two sides at a time, and it's able to mal that copper or move that copper around to make that nice that we want. And this also has a clutch on it, so it doesn't over tighten, so we don't squeeze that
Look at
copper and make it
that.
too thin. Now,
Yeah.
this is an old one. This is not a
Yeah.
new technology. This is still quite old. I've used this one for a long, long time. And there's a newer model that's very similar to that. It still uses a clutch inside. It still has the cone inside that offsets. What's cool about both of these is they have a little keeper right here that keeps you from pushing that copper up too far. Even this older one, it had the keeper already built in, so you didn't push it in too far, so that would affect the flare. If you put that copper in there too far and you start flaring it, your flare gets to be too big, or maybe you didn't go far enough and it's too small. And then we don't have the gasket material to make that seal that is so important.
So we actually have that potential for ruining the seal that we're trying to utilize in making our dissimilar metal connection.
Absolutely right. And if we look on this camera view here, we can see how that copper fits in. So here's we're going to change to this view here.
Absolutely. A little closer.
Nope. The one that's facing down.
Oh,
sorry.
My bad. Look at me. Look at me. Trying to do too many.
There we go.
Here. Now we're getting there.
Here's that copper. It's flared, but it's been cut off. And here's that union nut. And that copper fits right perfectly. I mean, it has to fit perfectly inside that cone, so that as that cone comes up to that union piece, that's making the seal. A lot of people think these threads are making the seal. The threads are only to help hold it together. The thread does nothing. Putting thread sealant, nothing about those threads matter. And here we have it where it's cut away. You can see the copper itself is making that seal on both sides. The back side, this nut with the threads, the backside, that nut pushes against the copper on the backside, and then the copper is squeezed between that union on the inside. So what's between those two is just simply the copper itself. The threads are way over here. You can actually see a gap on the threads.
You can see the gap inside of the threading.
Are irrelevant. So we can see that copper is what makes the seal. So the refrigerant flows right on through like it's not even there. And how this is cut away, you notice it's really actually difficult to see because it's meshed so perfectly.
Yeah.
And
you can only see a difference in the sheen of the material.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And that copper, I mean, that's so important. It has to be done just right to make that beautiful, perfect seal. Otherwise, we're going to have it leaking through here. And by the time it leaks into the threads, the game's already lost. It's going to leak to the threads. It's going to leak back this way. You can put tons of any product you want in there. It's not going to stop it at that point because it all goes down to this copper itself. How we cut the copper and we prepare the copper and ultimately make it a nice flare.
I couldn't tell you how many times I've walked up to a system doing a system evaluation and see anything oozing out of the threads and go, okay, somebody had a leak. Now let's think about this for a second. I think this is very important for us to recognize, right? Everything HVACR, hey, we're so glad you're here, man. This is really why we do this stuff. We want everyone to be able to just have a deeper, better understanding of the environment. Oh, there's a great shot of that, Ty. That is an absolutely beautiful shot of how that copper creates a seal between the two brass fittings. So if we think about that, right? If I walk up to an installation and I've got any type of material oozing out of that, a technician or an installer has had a leak on that fitting. But what's happened now is they have taken it apart. And remember, Ty, we just talked about that very important seal that gets compressed between two hard metals. What happens when I take that nut off and I just simply put something on my threads? What happens to my seal?
It's gone.
It's gone. I no longer have a seal. I now have a tempered piece of copper. Now, think about this. If I have a tempered piece of copper, that means I now have the potential for my copper to have vibrations at different frequencies. I have the potential for thinning that curve between my copper tubing and my flare. Remember, it's designed to have that seal one time, and that is it. Anytime we have a leak on an installation, it's critical that we do what with that flare, Ty?
We replace it because we know there are no good vibrations. It's all bad vibrations.
That's right.
There's no song about bad vibrations.
I love it. Love it. Just rolling them out. I was going to do the dad jokes, but who needs them? We got them all throughout the show. And by the way, speaking of the show, we truly want to know where you're joining us from. I'm outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, here in Brownsburg. Ty, where are you at today?
We're in San Angelo, Texas, or Carlsbad, Texas.
Yeah. How's the weather out there today?
It's 95 outside and 98 inside.
That's a little warm. Right. More warm. Well, so let's think about this, though, Josh. Right? Let's think about what happens when we don't do it right the first time, okay? One of the things that we get is, Reed, thanks for letting us know where you're at, man. I'm glad you're here today. If we think about that flare, and it's one of the most important things on our installation, and we may complain about the cost of a new flaring block, but how much does it cost for a warranty return call on a leaking flare on an installation? Let's think about that for a minute. Typically, we're charging I wouldn't say charging. Internally, typically we're about $150 per hour to roll a vehicle, right? Now we know we're going to spend time on the job. We're going to use oil on the vacuum pump as we've taken things apart. We're going to be recovering refrigerant. We're going to be redoing this flare, putting a system back together. And so the time lost in a single repair covers the entire cost of not just your flaring tools, but your torque wrenches as well. One job, one leak. So put that into perspective. So let's think about this from a brand new installation. Okay, Ty, we both got systems here. One that has not been installed. Mine has been installed. I have utilized this one before for some training videos. Pulled the refrigerant out, sealed the system up, set it to the side. But I have to think about this as a new installation, okay? I absolutely have to cut the flare off from mine because I've already tempered my copper during my installation. But what about on a brand new line set?
Well, this is a brand new line set right here because I'm going to install this one, so it's not going to be sweating my butt off in the future. So this one's I'm looking forward to get it installed.
Yes, and then next week we'll have AC.
Can't wait. It's going to be so cool. This one has the factory. It's already factory done, but these are mass produced, and I do not trust them. I will cut these off every single time and make a new flare on them because I do not trust any factory flares. I don't trust them. Actually, I even have a flaring gauge.
I was getting ready to ask that. Let's do that.
I actually check flares. So even if I'm using them right, I want to check it to make sure it's done good. So we got a 3/8 right here. And
it's a great challenge for our students and for our technicians in our training classes. It is critical to have the flare so close to tolerance that it barely touches a pre-machined lip inside of our flare block.
And so this one looks good, but it doesn't fit in there. So it's not a good flare. So I have another one over here. Look at this one, perfectly in. It's tight all the way around. It's like even if you turn it at an angle, it gets really tight, but it fits in out. That is a difference. Now both of these flares, they look nice.
Look nice. Right? They look perfect, and
we can't go by looks. We can't judge the copper by how they look. We need to actually be measuring it and see what its true performance is and having a tool where we can measure that. There's lots of brands that do this, but you can get a flaring gauge and check to see how good is that flare really doing. Here's one with that flaring block that I don't like. You can see all those grooves in there that I hate, and it doesn't
even fit.
It doesn't fit. And I don't think the camera is going to show it, but there are cracks all in the
Oh,
side. And you know what? We say no to cracks. We need to throw this away. It is no good.
that's exactly right. So out of curiosity, I'm going to do mine as well, but out of curiosity, let's take a look. And what we're talking about, I do have a blown up picture so you have a better idea. That picture on the left, that's the cracks we're talking about. So no matter what, if we have any cracks on that ledge, it's a guaranteed leak once we start doing compression. So just remember that as we go forward. So let's take your brand new line set, and I will take my pre-installed line set, and let's see how they actually compare on our flare gauge out of curiosity. All right.
All right, let's see what happens.
Let's see what we got.
Now, while you're doing that, there is an acceptable place to have leaks. Do you know where it's acceptable to have leaks?
An acceptable place to have leaks. I have a feeling I'm going to be running over to the Roadcaster for some audio.
Yeah, it's going to be over at the supermarket in the vegetable section.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
There's always leaks there.
Always leaks there. Oh,
you want the fresh ones.
You want some fresh leaks. All right, and we're going to come back to this in a little bit when we start talking about torquing and proper torque for flare nuts. I'm only going to undo one of mine for right now because we're going to use this as a challenge here in a little bit. And I'm going to test my one flare. You're welcome to test both of yours. Now remember, this was a previously installed system. All my flares were gauged properly. My flare nuts were torqued properly. And now, after I have taken this out of service, I'm going to recheck this flare and see what's happened to it to see if it is still within specifications. Now remember, it is a very, very tight tolerance when we start talking about our flare gauge. There's a variety of manufacturers that make them, and it's crucial that you have it. I know, Mr. Murph. We'll be good. We'll try to be good. Maybe. We'll see, won't we, Ty?
No guarantees.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no, we're actually going to get into that here in just a minute, Total Tech. Yeah, absolutely, because there's some critical reasons for that. All right. So I'm going to take mine, and remember, this has already been gauged once. It was correct on installation. Now when I try to, well, Ty, I can't even get it inside of my gauge anymore. What happened? What happened to my flare? Well, remember, when we create our flares and we use our gauge, what we're doing is we're using that lip of the copper for our compression fitting. And as we compress that nut onto it, just exactly like Ty was showing you, we are going to compress that copper lip to a very specific point so that it makes a seal. It's going to compress slightly. If it compresses too far, it's going to be too hard to be reused. But as it does, that flare is actually going to swell. So on this installation was proper on the first time. Now that it has been removed, it does not fit into my flare gauge, which means immediately I cannot reuse that connection on my system for two reasons. One, the copper has already been annealed by compression. And two, it is now oversized, which means if I try to recompress that, I have no room for my compression expansion to create the seal. So I'm going to have to redo mine. I'm going to have to actually cut it, and I'm going to have to create a new one. How about yours? What did we see off from your side?
Well, I just put mine together here just now, but haven't taken it back apart.
Okay.
But isn't that going to be challenging? Look how much copper we have to lose if we cut that off. Is there any kind of a trick that we don't have to lose that much copper?
There might be, because sometimes it's a pretty snug installation and I don't want to remove very much. That's the beauty of our redesigned tools. We have utilized flare chambers inside our roller stem. So as we look at that, you'll notice that there is a secondary grooved area in the roller. Yours has two, so that you can go either direction. Mine is just on the one side. I'll pull that up to show a little bit. And on some of those, will actually have spring-loaded functions designed for either the use of hard copper or soft copper that will control the spring tension of that cutter so that we're not putting too much stress upon the copper. Remember, it's all about making a proper fit. So the cutting is absolutely crucial as well. Okay, so we're going to cut off. Yep.
It is so important because I've seen people try to cut fast and they try to just really, and it'll egg the copper, and it'll bend that copper inside, and it makes a horrible burr that causes a lot of refrigerant restriction. But in the flaring case, it's even more of an issue because now we've changed how much copper is on the end. So making sure that if you don't have the cool spring action, that you just put a little bit of tension, go around, spend more time cutting, less time with the rest of it. Now, when we get that cut, I like to ream it. Now
Absolutely.
You can use one of these, which these came out. They're really cool. The new style is this. Instead of having one blade, it's like a file inside.
Yeah, it's got a variety of surfaces.
Really, really easy for me to deburr that. So this is a summer tool because it deburrs. There's no more burr. And then also it's got one for the other side so I can make sure it's nice and clean. Now this has been all scarred up from that flaring block that I don't like, so I'm not going to use it. Just giving an example.
Just as demonstration.
How easy it is to get that burr off of there with these tools. I mean, it's super easy to do.
And so what you're going to be looking for when you're done is just a nice clean edge. This one I haven't done yet, but you want to keep it consistent and you'll end up with a nice clean flare. If we take too much off, we're going to thin the copper at the outside edge, which is going to remove its ability to expand in that compression. And because it's under tension as it's annealing, it's going to split and create a leak. So the goal is to maintain the consistency of the sidewall of the copper.
And that's one thing I like about this cone design is it keeps everything uniform, to whereas these, you can end up cutting too much off of one side. Now, I have nothing. I love these, but it's just a little different in that design. Yep. Whereas this is that cone and it's a file. It allows me to evenly make sure I keep that sidewall correct.
Because as we're rotating around, it's easy to overturn on the edges.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to start with a good clean piece of copper. Now, let's move on to correct placement inside of a block. What do you think?
Absolutely. What's the biggest mistake that you have when you're making flares? When you get everything done perfect and you have that most beautiful flare, what's the one thing that you realize later that you need to do?
Put the flare nut on.
Absolutely. I'm glad it's not just me because I still do that. I'll make these beautiful flares and realize, oh yeah,
I've done that in class and looked around and went, now somebody come cut this flare off and show me how we're going to do this, right? Okay. All right. So when we were using our traditional flare blocks, I seen the one come up earlier. I think it was Todd that mentioned it was about a nickel thickness, and that is correct. It is approximately. Most of our modern flare blocks will utilize a gauge to show us how far we're going to be introducing that copper into the flaring block. You can see it's a sliding one on that one, right? All right, Ty, so let's kind of walk us through. So we've done our proper cleaning. Sorry, I'm actually looking through some slides in the background here. Oh, I did have one I was going to pull up. So a post trim. Oh, looks something similar to that. So as Ty's getting that ready, I'm going to move through here, see where we're at. And anyone have any questions as we're diving into this? So as he's getting that ready, you're going to see this particular one has a rotating gauge. The one that is on mine looks just like this. So I'm actually using CPS Black Max. I mean, there's a lot of really good pieces of flaring equipment out today. But you'll see we want to bring that copper right up against our edge of that movable spacer so that we get the proper thickness on our tubing.
I think we should have a contest to see who can make the flare the fastest.
It's on.
Oh, are we going?
I'm going, buddy. You better.
Here we go. All right.
We're going to catch up to you here in just a second here. Boy, this is about the time for the Wicked Witch of the West soundtrack, right? I'm not going to move my tools over here, too.
I'm going to give you a head start.
Okay. All right. Let's see what we can do here. spring loaded. And with mine, I do have the spring tension on it. So what it does is it allows us to, let me move back to that slide. What it'll allow us to do on these with the predetermined tension set is it allows us to set an exact amount of tension on the set. So you see where that is soft? So what we're doing is we turn the handle until we actually get that line right up to this particular one is going to be soft. Yeah, your nickel was a gauge. You're right. That's what we all learned from. And it's still pretty consistent with these new ones. Oh, boy, that's a good one. That's a good one right there. Ty, we have a flare for this. All right, so I'm going to bring my line down to where it says soft. And that is going to give me my proper tension that's going to be loaded onto that spring, right? And so then it's a matter, I'm not readjusting, I'm just turning, and it's going to cut off my tension that I need. I don't have the conical style. I am still using my standard straight one here. It works pretty good. Okay, and so one of the things we do hear about once in a while is, oh, it takes so long to do this on these new flaring blocks, right? Josh, about 1 minute. You're right. That's about how long it should take, is around a minute to do these. Okay, so let's go back. And you already got your flare. You got your block on, Ty?
I'm ready. I'm waiting on you, Clifton.
All right, hold on. I'll get my block set up, and we'll make sure that I do this properly.
Now, I know you're not a new kid in the block. You should have this down by now.
You know, I've been out of the field a little bit. I need to be back out doing some more. I've been kind of talking to some of my local contractors, going, man, I really need to get out of here and do some.
Any of these scrap pieces of copper you guys have, you need to make sure you put them behind the driver's seat, because we all know we drive better when there's a copper behind you.
Oh, look at that. Man, he's just rolling with them today. All right, come on. I gotta get my chuck set. There she goes. All right. Oh, you can go ahead, Ty. We can talk a little bit while I'm taking my time.
And really, it's a progress. So I started out using that old style flaring block, and I always struggled getting good flares. And then I moved up into the other style flaring blocks that had the pieces, but I still didn't understand about that flare being a gasket and the importance of not reusing them. So even if you have the best tools, it's still about understanding how to use them and how that flare fitting is actually working and what's going on inside, so that we can, make that the best as possible. Now, I love tools, and I love about fancy technology, getting stuff done faster. And so I ended up getting this, and I thought, man, I don't need a battery powered. I can do a flare pretty fast, but this thing's pretty cool. You ready to do your flare? You set up?
Ready? Hold on.
Okay.
My clutch is slipping on me here real quick. Hold on. I gotta see what I'm doing wrong.
Don't ride the clutch.
Ready? Ready? Go.
I'm gonna lock it in.
Clutch kick. Right.
Welcome.
How'd that go? So, all right. So let's take a look at these, right? So we're both trying to do this pretty quick to show that it doesn't take a lot of time. Now, you're right. The most important part is checking our flares up against gauge, right? Okay, let's see what we got. Woo! Mine just barely touches.
I'm perfect.
Right?
I can't get any better than that right there.
Look at that. Two different style tools producing ideal flares in no time. So it takes out the guesswork, right? It takes out all of those, okay, let me get this about a nickel thick, and let me crank this and let's tighten this up, let's pressurize it and see if I sealed it properly. That's the thing. How do we know that we actually sealed that thing properly? Well, we won't until we do that leak test. But one of the things I wanted to talk about in this, I think I had some slides on it, but I don't even know if we're going to need any slides today, Ty. I mean, we're actually doing everything that I was wanting to talk about except for actual torque specs, which we're getting ready to do. Okay, so if we get to that point, Yeah, you're right, Total Tech. There's been a lot of changes in the blends of metals that we use in the copper. Right, so it's very important to be careful as we're making our bends with them. All right, so let's look at this. Just as an experiment, we're actually going to. I will on this particular unit. I'm going to reattach this 1/4 inch line, and I'm going to see how much torque it takes to seal this up. So let me know out there in the chat, what is the correct amount of tightening for a flare? Yeah, you like that? I know, isn't it? It's really changed the way we're doing this, Hughes, man. It's given us the ability to do hands-on classes, do demonstrations, and just show you, what things look like in the real world. Both of us actually have them here. So I may end up bringing mine's up. I ain't even using mine. I need to take that out maybe. But we both have them fired up utilizing these. Now, all right, so let's think about this. I haven't had anyone in the chat. Everyone's out there probably going, it's a 1/4 turn past finger tight. Yeah, Total Tech, it depends. And we're going to get to that because there's actually an exact range that it should be for every size of copper. Great point. And we're actually going to show that. But I wanted to demonstrate how far off we can actually be if we're not checking, right? It is. More info is required. And such a good point. We're actually going to pull that up in the manual here in a little bit. And we're going to demonstrate that because it is in the installation manuals, right? All right. Not as tight as my ball sock set, right? All right. You'll hear that. Okay. Crank it more because one of the old things, now someone that grew up with oil, right? Working on oil furnaces and working on flare connections on those lines. One of the things we'd always say is, if it's got a leak, you just crank on it a little bit more and you'll seal that leak up. Well, that's true until you actually crack the flare and then you have a big leak. But we were talking about systems that operated under much lower pressures, just a few PSI, right? Now we're talking about hundreds of PSI through a similar thickness wall tubing. So just out of demonstration purposes, I'm going to take this 1/4 inch line. I'm going to run it down finger tight, just good and snug. And then I'm going to give it, I won't get enough of that. Then I'm going to give it a 1/4 of a turn. Okay. That should be tight. That should be a good fit, shouldn't it, Ty?
Sure. Good old.
How do I know how tight it is?
It's got to be good.
Right? Paul Leonardi, 100% correct. It has a specification by the manufacturer. And so on a proper installation, we've talked about how we get to that flare. We got the correct flare thickness. It's actually being gauged properly. We're going to install that. And then the only way to do this properly is to use a torque wrench and set that flare nut to its torque spec. Now I'm going to run a couple slides here in the background since we've already covered all this stuff so well. And we do have a bunch of pre-made slides. If anyone ever needs any of this for your classroom to show what we're actually demonstrating here, we have tons of that. I've done some high-def photos of each one of these procedures. We'll be happy to share this stuff just so that you've got some prep material. But here's really what we're talking about. We're talking about utilizing installation manuals to do a proper install. We're going to be using a clutch type flaring block, and this is right out of a manufacturer's installation manual. This is nothing new. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Once we have attached that, right? Once we have attached our flare, we have to go by the manufacturer specifications for torquing, because it's going to be really interesting when you see how much torque I put on this 1/4 inch line that has that finger tight plus a 1/4 inch, because we hear that all the time, right? Now, I do get the questions every once in a while. Ty, how do you feel about applying oil onto a fitting?
So I always put oil on the flare itself and sometimes on the back side of that flare, but not on the threads. I love this product called Nylog. The guy's an engineer. John Pastorella is an engineer. He's a guy that of the trade for the trade. They've done testing. It's really refrigerant oil, and all it is just it's a little thicker quantity of the oil, and you put just a little bit. This is not going to fix a bad flare.
Right.
What it's going to do is give you some insurance on some impurities of the copper, or if anything didn't come out just perfectly right. And I like to put some just right on the face of that flare, just a little bit. You don't want it running inside. People overdo it all the time. All it takes is just a little bit. Now this stuff's gooey. It's yucky. Like you're gonna have to clean it off, leave a rag on it, but it just takes a little drop on there, and then I just move it all the way around. And sometimes I like to put some on the backside too, just to make it get a nice good end where it's pulling both ends together. It allows that lubrication. It's not sealing over here, it's just adding some lubrication, but inside it just helps any of those possible impurities or maybe a lower quality copper. And it's like insurance. And if you've heard of, there's a Mo-Spogsman Act, it's not going to void any warranty. You're not getting a ton of none should be inside the piping. It's just an insurance. In the old school days, we used just a little drop of refrigerant oil. It's the same thing. Some people are completely against it. That's fine. And again, I want to say that this doesn't fix a bad flare. It's just insurance. I'm a fan of this product. I use it all the time. I even use it on my vacuum connections because it helps make that seal, that rubber last longer.
Yeah, good point, Paul. So it's great to have our manufacturers hanging out with us talking about this too. There's a lot of things we can say about doing installations, but what it comes down to is understanding how to read our installation manuals and follow them. Because there are installation manuals that will show you, like in this particular one, not to use so do not apply refrigeration oil to the outer surface, right? So, but it can say apply refrigeration oil to the inner surface of the flare, right out of a installation manual. Okay, so we're just making sure we're following proper procedures.
And the reason that manufacturers are concerned about putting it on the backside is because it can have an effect on the torque of that flare. So I don't like to use any on the threads at all because I feel like that would really make a difference. But it's, from what I understand from the manufacturers, said they have it so precisely torqued that they don't want to have that throwing off the torque, and it could make it to where you're over torquing or under torquing it. So it's a personal preference there. You're going to follow the manufacturer specifically into the T. Some people like a little leeway. I'll let you guys argue about that, what you think's best.
One of the things that came through a while ago was making sure that you were utilizing the torque wrench correctly. Absolutely total tech. Some of the torque wrenches out there, if it has the removable head, you could actually have it go in a direction where it doesn't matter where you set the actual torque range. It would actually always overcome. It would never meet the actual torque. So going the correct direction is very important. And so you'll see contradictory photos of that in this piece of my training, but I'm going to get there as to why, right? So, yeah.
And I just do want to clarify that we're not being sponsored by any of these tools or any of these products. These are my personal tools that I use. So I'm using one brand, you're using another brand. Nalog, I know the owner, I know the people. I've bought everything. I've not received anything free from them. You can double check on that. These are just things that we use. And this is about using that proper thing. The fine details, you guys can argue that all you want, but these are the tools and the things that we use, and this is why it still goes back to the facts of making sure that flare is done properly, making sure that we're using a torque wrench, making sure we're getting that flare checked properly. All of these are going to be the key to having that leak-free seal.
So the reason I like to utilize demonstrations, especially in our classrooms, and I figured someone would probably call me out on utilizing my wrenches wrong. I'm actually not tightening on the right side. I'm tightening on the left, so I am backing up with my wrench on the backside. I'm utilizing my torque wrench to spec to actually tighten it. But here's what I like to do in a classroom, Ty. I like to challenge my students and I like to challenge my technicians when I'm at a contractor training to see how much torque they've actually put on a flare nut. Because if we think about the principles of pressure, if I apply a particular amount of pressure to seat my flare nut, I should be able to remove it with the same amount of pressure, right? If I'm using a manually adjustable torque wrench, it's going to only click off at what I set that. But the beauty of a digital torque wrench is it's actually going to show us that progressive torque. Now, remember that rule of thumb, that finger tight plus quarter inch might apply on, 1.125 line or 7/8, but let's talk about this little quarter inch that I put. Let's look at some specifications, Ty, real fast, then we'll come back here. Let's look at some specifications of where this quarter inch should be. So this particular manufacturer says that liquid side flare nut tightening torque. So I'm on that liquid side quarter inch. I should have been in the 10.5 to 12.75 foot-pounds of torque to set this particular flare. All right, so while I get my torque wrench set, I would like for those that are still out there, there's a lot of people hanging in here, give me your thoughts in the chat of how much torque it's going to take to remove this flare nut off from this quarter inch line that I did finger tight plus quarter of a turn. And let's see how it compares to what the manufacturer actually told me to, because I've heard this so many times in the field. Finger tight plus a quarter of an inch. Okay. All right. And so I'm going to get it set up while it comes in. Robert, absolutely. There's some really good products out there. We're not promoting any products. That's the one thing about this show. We have manufacturers that might send us some tools just to see if we like them. But almost all of the tools that we have are tools that we used in the field or bought on our own. So we don't.
And you can verify that with my wife.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ty. All right. So Todd's saying that this flare nut's too tight. Okay. How much too tight though, Todd? Give me a thought. All right. How much over tight could that be? With adjustable head, nice. Absolutely. Can be, but still necessary. All right, here we go. So I have utilized my little edit for later. All right, Total Tech. There we go. Now we're talking. Total Tech says 23 pound-feet. Thank you, pound-feet. I said foot-pound earlier, didn't I? That actually says foot-pound, but pound-feet. All right, so we're going to fire it up real quick, and we're going to set the proper torquing. I should have had my glasses on. All right, so let me get her set up. Ain't that horrible when we get older, Ty? I can't see hardly anything anymore. All right, we'll get there though. All right, so where are you at now, Ty?
Well, I'm at 16.4.
Okay.
And that's what's important, is to make sure you go for your manufacturer specification. There's no one size fits all. This unit that the manual I have for this one had 16.4 as the spec, or 16.5, I think is the spec. And notice how different that was on yours.
Yes.
And the manufacturer makes that nut that matches the threads. This is a match set. So you want to make sure you're using those specific specifications when you're torquing it. That's why when you get a torque wrench set, it doesn't have just a range. Now I keep one in my torque set just as an idea, but we need to go off that manufacturer specified, and that's the beauty of these.
Oh.
And I used to have one that clicked.
Yes,
I couldn't stand it. I ended up giving that thing away, and it was always off. Like, it would click at different numbers, and I felt like I couldn't trust it. And so I got this digital one, and it beeps and tells me, has a line, tells me how close I'm getting to it, and I've really loved it.
I do too. Man, come on, almost there. I really can't see. That's horrible. All right, I should be on pound-feet. Finally. Took more time to set up my torque wrench than it did to make my flare. That's horrible. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So nearly 200%. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now we're saying potentially double. Let's go find out. All right. Now I have to go down to be able to get a good connection on it. I don't know that I'll be able to show this from that distance, but all right, so we got a good connection there. We're going to back this up. Should be backing it up from that direction. And here we go. And 60, 70, 80, 71 foot-pounds of torque. So, Ty, where does that fall in range with 71 foot-pounds?
I think it might be just a little bit off.
I don't know that I have anything with that high. Let me go to one of my other charts and see. If I have anything in that range, I don't. No 5/8. So really comes down to, you got to trust your tools too. So we have to make sure we're using and testing proper tools. All right. So one of the things just came in from Don Baker. Important note: if using aftermarket manufactured flares or flare nuts, use the torque specs from that manufacturer. Good point.
Yes.
All right. So the most important thing, we're cutting off the existing flares. We're using the nuts on the equipment. Why is that important, Ty?
Because they're made together. They're made as a match set. So the threads match up. They're off the assembly line ideally at the same time. So they're all lined up correctly. You can get one manufacturer of a nut and a different manufacturer of the union, and they could be a different thread pitch or a slightly different manufacturer on the end or a different amount of cone on that end, and it won't have the correct force all the way across that copper like it needs. It may be on just one edge or the other side, or it may they're not matching up. So it's very important to use the one that come with that system. Now cut that factory flare off and make your own, but yes, use the ones that come with that system.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That was the stuff I wanted to cover. Where are we at?
Now let's talk about a few other little options that are out there.
Yes.
So sometimes you're working on a job, you don't have enough copper to cut off. There are some products. Now I'm going to say I have not used this. I'm going to install this unit. I'm going to use multiple different products when I install it because I want to test this stuff out. But there's a product that has these little flare seals that are supposed to go in between your union and the copper. And it's supposed to be able to, as you tighten it up, it takes up any impurities on both sides and supposedly allows you to make a better seal and a better connection. Now, I have not used these. I'm not promoting them, but I am going to use them to test them out. There's another brand that uses one. It's called Seco Seals. And what they use is a copper gasket like we used to use in the old days,
Pre-made.
But they have a little bit of tinned metal on the side, and they allow it to go in between those two. And they recommend it for new or existing connections, that it's a reusable copper seal. And they claim that it works really well. I have these. I couldn't find them for the show, but I am going to be trying them. How will they work? I cannot say because I have not used them, but I'm curious. So we're going to try it out. And there's another option. Let's say that you don't have a torque wrench, you don't got the good flaring tools, you don't have the stuff to do it correctly. There is a company out here that's it's called Aircept, and they make these connections. And this side goes onto the flare fitting. This side goes into the copper. So you sand the copper down, you make it nice and clean. There's very specific instructions. Whoop, I'm out of focus.
Yep.
There's very specific instructions for these. And when you put the copper slides through, you connect these together. And what you do is you use your adjustable wrench on both sides. And as you bring this together, it just simply stops. And when it stops, it's already to the correct torque and everything that they've designed. Now, Aircept makes automotive fittings. They make fittings for all the cars and stuff, especially for the hoses go from the very front to the very back of the car for the back air conditioner side. And they're getting into the refrigeration side. They have sent me these. I did not buy these. They're not paying me for any of this. They sent me these, so I'm going to actually try them. I'm going to install them on this unit right here and see how well they work, because I think it's a great option if you can't start off, you can't afford all of the other tools, or maybe there's an issue, you don't have enough copper left. So I think there's some value in some of these other options, and I've done a lot of research on these, and I think it's pretty interesting. I'm not saying it's for every situation, but I do think it is something that could have some value. So I'm going to be testing these out. I got a 3/8 and also a 1/4 inch. I'm going to be trying them. And they also have these that go on for union connections and even traditional AC systems. They have these that fit over the female side of the unit, of the condensing unit. So you don't have to use any brazing. You can connect it together, tighten them up. I'm going to be testing those out also. So, if you're in a situation like New York where you have to have hot permits and you can't get them, there are some other options even outside of flares. So, like I say, I'm not promoting the company. I've done some research. I'm very curious about it, and I'm going to try them out myself. But these are just some of the other things that are out there and it's available.
Yeah, and let us know in the chat. Don Baker, I appreciate you letting us know that you have used those. Like I said, we're really not here to promote anything. We're here to show you your options, give you instructions on the things that we are good at doing, and giving you tools that you can utilize in your classroom, so that we're showing multiple ways to accomplish the same thing.
There's another one, and it's probably user error, but I'm trying to make sure we don't see the name of it. And you
Yeah.
use a drill, and it circles around, and you put it in the copper, and it nails it and gets it hot, and it makes a flare. And I've personally never had one that fit properly in the flare block. Now, I'm not trying to say anything bad about any brand. There's two different brands that make them. I've used both, and I just personally haven't had any luck. It's probably user error. I haven't been using them right, but I have tried some of these other options. Maybe it works for you. Maybe you have somebody that's used them. You can try it and see and tell me what it is I'm doing wrong about them. But regardless of which method you use, that's why it's important to use a
Use
tool
that
to make sure
gauge.
you're checking that flare. So the first time I thought, hey, it looked good, and I put it on, it was leaking, and I checked it, and it was a bad flare. So don't get in the habit of, hey, it could be a good flare 99% of the time. But that 1% of the time that you didn't check
That
it,
one.
that's going to be the leak. That's going to be the callback.
That's
That's
going
going
to
to be
be
where the
Friday night, right before a holiday weekend, and you're going to get there and go,
And even
okay.
not only on our side, the amount of cost that we have to lose, look at the cost on the equipment. You're looking at refrigerant leaks, the possibility of introducing moisture into the system. The compression ratio is going to get very high, being low in charge. There's not enough refrigerant to cool the compressor. The compressor starts overheating. You start to have an oil breakdown once the discharge line exceeds 225. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. It's not just about, oh, well, it's leaking, I get paid to come back. It takes life off of that equipment, as well as we want to do the best we can. As tradespeople, like, we take pride in what we
Absolutely.
do. Like this, it's not about just we go to an office. Like, we leave our mark on the world. We do things with our hands and work with our hands, doing things a lot of people can't do. And some of that requires some expensive tools, similar to the automotive side. But we should take pride in learning more, always wanting to grow and keep moving forward. And somebody once told me, one of the biggest challenges to learning something new is past experiences. We either have things that seem to work and we think that we already know it, so we don't need to learn something new. And sometimes that keeps us learning new things. So there's always 100,000 reasons of doing it the way you've always done it. But that one thing about being able to try new things, learn new things, and grow, that's the reason to keep learning. At the HVAC Excellence Conference, there are people that have been in a trade longer than I've been alive. There's people that are twice my age there, still learning new stuff. And I think that's the key, is we have to keep learning. All this new stuff, we have to keep learning, trying it. Here I am. I grew up with, the old flaring blocks. Here I'm using, digital cool stuff. And it's about learning and growing. And there's always something new to learn. So make sure you're on that. And everybody here, I have to tell you, you guys are here wanting to learn. And that's what's important. So we're here learning new stuff, applying new stuff, and take that new stuff and share it, show other people.
It's really what we're here for. I mean, that's what it's all about. You're right. So Ray Coker, 92 years old, at the conference to learn. I had him on the podcast. I'm going, there's no reason anyone in this industry can complain about having time. Yeah, it's exactly right. That's what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
So we encourage all of you to join us. This is what we do. There are probably people here for the first time. There's a lot of people joining this week. We're so grateful to have you here. And if you haven't been here before, this is what we're here to do. We're here to share with you. We're here to bring firsthand education. We all join at the conference every year with top educators from the industry, just to bring all of this awareness to you. We do this for you. I mean, I know for myself, Ty, this is what I do. Is I try to give back what I've learned, because I didn't have enough of this when I was developing.
I still can't get it. I love this trade. It is just awesome. We saw Dustin Cole was in the chat, and
Yep.
man, I've learned so much from him. He's in a very humid climate, and he's into the building science side and understanding not just the air conditioner, but the whole house system, specifically on how to control indoor air quality and humidity. And that's an awesome person. Getting to meet somebody like that is just so powerful in what he knows in his climate. And I always love learning from him. And there's always so many people around us we can learn from that are applying new stuff. And the people that I learn from are always striving to learn more stuff. It's really a great community that we've built.
This show is my learning lesson. You'll watch, like, if you go back and watch some of the videos, especially some of our manufacturers. I actually seen one of our manufacturer technical trainers on here a while ago. Yeah, definitely like, subscribe, and share. This is the people that I learn from by having them on the show. There are so many times, you probably noticed a while ago, Ty's sitting there talking. I'm sitting back here going, where's my notepad? Where's my note? I need this stuff. So Total Tech had a really good question a while ago. So we covered this when we first dove into this, and really the principle is to understand that flare is this seal that is designed to compress to a specific amount between the dissimilar metals. Sometimes it's a metal flare nut, sometimes it's a brass flare nut, a bronze. So we can have a variety of materials, but that copper tubing itself is the actual flare between the two components. So we'll try to see if we can get another picture. If not, there's a really good one in the slide earlier. I'll make sure to try to tag that particular spot in the video so you can go back and see it, where Ty actually shows us how that flare becomes a very integral part of the sealing of the components. And that once it's done once, it's actually expanded into its correct place and it's tempered into a new home, right? And once that seal has been broken, that seal has to be removed. It is a one-time use seal only.
And it's not just for the zoo, it's for you too.
You too.
Seals.
Seals. I love that one. Oh my gosh, such good stuff. All right, Ty, what else? Do we have anything else we want to dive into while we're still here? There's a lot of people still hanging on.
I could talk about this all day. Does anybody in the audience have any questions before we wrap up? And we'll give a little bit of time there.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a minute for that to come through.
And that's one of the things that, that Clifton, he's out here talking with the manufacturers and talking with people. And we're trying to bring this information to everybody to listen, because there's always something more to learn. There's always new stuff, especially now with, new refrigerants. This is an A2L system, R32. So I actually have 2 other R32 systems. I'm not scared of it at all. I am going to follow the safety. I've taken the class. I've been certified. But these new systems, especially now, the flaring is a great option if you're worried about brazing with that.
Absolutely,
you can have the flare in there. You don't have to worry about flowing nitrogen while you're actually doing the flare. Although I will say, even if you're flaring, it's good to flow that nitrogen while the system's open. It prevents it from having any it prevents it from having any moisture build up in there as that nitrogen's flowing through. And also it keeps any of the oxidation out, so that if for any reason there would be a sparking area, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, Paul, we encourage you to. All right, this is all really good stuff. Oh, Hugo, when is this next live? Every single Thursday from 4:30 to 5:30 Eastern. You can join us on all of these different social media networks, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. It'll send it over to our website at the HVACR Learning Network. And we encourage you to be back. Like last week, Todd brought up a funny one, that I'm now a master aluminum brazier. No, I was not an aluminum brazier before last week's show. And we had the correct person from the industry. We had Bob the brazier here to teach us how to repair and braze on aluminum. And that's what we do every week. We grab different topics. So let us know what you want to learn about. We're going to dive deeper into these A2L products that Ty was talking about. He's going to be doing installations. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of good follow-up videos on that, Ty. So stay in touch with us. We're here to serve you.
And typically I don't like to talk about the vices in our life, but I did have to bring this vice in for this show so I could, hold everything steady. So, sometimes a vice is okay in your life.
Yeah, sometimes we have many vices in our life. Well, it's never dry around here. Oh, so what? Yeah, what is the next topic? So, the next topic, we will have Bosch and Honeywell on next week for a really big show. Make sure you're all here next week. Bosch is going to be introducing their new A2L product lineup. We're going to be talking about the mitigation controls. We're going to talk about installation and commissioning and repairs. So there's a lot of really, really, really cool stuff it's going to be for next week. Perla, you guy's the man. I got a man crush going on here. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Ty, anything else we want to dive into? I think I
just got 2 things of advice. Yes. Keep learning something new and help others when you can. The world will be a better place with that.
Such great words of wisdom. Man, I think I want to stay here for a minute just going through all of these wonderful messages. Thank you all so much. I mean, we really enjoy doing this for you. We want to see you next week. Paul, we got to get you on here, my friend. We're just waiting for you. All right. Well, Ty, I think I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll join again next week and every week after that. And hopefully you'll have some good follow-ups on your newly installed air conditioning system with R32.
I really look forward to it.
You do, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll see
Thanks,
you
everybody.
all. Bye. We'll see you all next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show.